Hi, I'm Dennis Weiss. Welcome to our town. We're not in my town today, but we are with my guy, Jeremy Hill, who is the director of the Center for Economic Development and Business Research, Wichita State. Shocker colors right behind us. You got your yellow tie on. You're ready for the day.
I am. I'm ready.
So the last time I introduced you, which would be probably 10 years ago, we were at the Eisenhower Presidential Library, and I said, this is one of the smartest young men I know. Jeremy, there's some color in that beard. We're going to have to substitute young for something else there today. What do you say?
Yeah, well, after 10 years, people have noticed that gray beard getting more on me, and we're doing a board, and the group said, yes, the only thing that's changed for this conference is your gray beard.
There we go.
I had that just earlier this year.
So I had the pleasure of listening to you present in Abilene yesterday,
Absolutely.
which is our
time.
town. Had a good time. So I'm still willing to go with one of the smartest people I know. Based on your performance yesterday, I assume you'll carry the ball well today.
Oh, yeah.
You're an economist, which means that nobody knows how you do what you do.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is in life, you know. So weatherman and economist.
Right. It's always it's very an abstract kind of thing. It's not a hard, fast thing. You can't go and touch it. So
the principles are clear for both, and the measurements are clear for both. But the ultimate predictability is not an exact science. It's more of how we develop trends and ideas and behaviors. And I think that is something very good for our town to know about. So thanks for having a chance to come to Abilene yesterday, Salina today. Camera for the rest of the world.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you for letting me come chat with you.
All right. So how's Kansas doing?
So Kansas is doing a lot better today than we were a couple years ago.
Okay.
And a lot of people were surprised when their economy started to slow down, but 18's doing well, 19's doing well. And although we were really getting kind of nervous around the state, I think this next year is going to do pretty well.
So 10 years ago versus today, how much does the messaging about the economy drive the economy compared to 10 years ago?
Oh, just messaging.
Just messaging. None of the fundamentals, just what we say about it.
Well, that's a great point. I mean, earlier last week, one of the number one words that is Googled is the recession. And we're getting so really worked up about a potential recession that it might be affecting us a little bit on our overall economy, when actually I don't think the things that are out there is going to really slow us down. So yes, to the messaging, we're getting kind of concerned and nervous, but I don't think that's really something fundamentally different. People have more income, people have jobs, right? And those are the things that we should look to.
So I want you to know, my wife asked me a follow-up question this morning over coffee around your presentation yesterday. Now that's a good thing.
Yeah,
right?
Got them engaged.
That's right, exactly. And the follow-up question was, explain what Jeremy meant by we're not too concerned about consumer debt levels in our country, and then she talked a little bit about, we're always concerned about debt as individuals or a company. So what did Jeremy mean by that? And I said, he's an economist. He said he's not concerned because the level of consumer debt versus GDP is at a near all-time low in the modern era. So therefore, fundamentally, it can't be worse. It's maybe not good in the common sense word, but it's certainly not a concern as a fundamental measurement because we're in a good place.
Yeah, well, the context was consumers are out there spending today.
Right.
And if we back up just a little over 10 years ago, they are out there spending, but they were spending money they didn't have.
Right.
Versus today, they're spending money they actually have, and debt is staying low. So that's
See,
a much
honey,
better point.
I was right. I gave you the right answer this morning.
Right? They're healthy, and they're not overextending their credit.
Yeah. And that's a big thing. So, but I want to dwell on messaging a little. There's no way in 22 minutes we can go through the analysis of the economy. So I want to talk about some things I think that we can think about through a TV screen. And what you say about something can become part of its reality. And we talk about this in Abilene all the time. One of the little ad hoc groups that's doing good things in Abilene today is called Abilene Forward. It's just a group, I call them a coalition of the willing. They're willing to talk about problems and willing to come up with solutions, and then they're willing to go do it. We killed a lot of weeds in Abilene, for example, this year. Having said that, but the first action is what you say about something, either positive or negative. And I'm not talking about saying something positive when it's really negative. I'm talking about finding a way to work towards saying something positive. But for the economy, you're telling us?
Oh, so yeah, I'm positive about the overall state economy. And I will say, to extend that, there were some people in that room trying to understand, hey, let's not focus on the negative, but they were themselves saying, what are the elements that it's a shifting economy locally in Abilene, and how do we look at those values? And so to your point, there was a lot of people in the room thinking about those, the real aspects of how we handle this new economy.
So what has changed in a broad sense since 10 years ago in Kansas, in the economies that drive, and we're setting in rural Kansas? You made that point yesterday pretty clear. If we're not in Wichita, Topeka, or Kansas City, we're in rural Kansas. So we're in rural Kansas today. What's changed in the last 10 years in rural Kansas in our economy?
Well, for rural, there for a while it was doing really well because agriculture was right behind it.
Record level commodity prices.
Yeah, they were doing great post-recession. But today, you take agriculture out, you take oil and gas out, the rural parts of the state have been struggling the last couple of years just because of those commodity prices. The global trade war is really affecting them. And then that just puts those other pressures down on those areas and those regions, those businesses like farmers, making it a struggling time for them today.
Let's set agriculture over here for a second, because that is something we want to talk about individually. I do anyway, and you're forced to. He's got the camera.
We're here today.
But oil, you know, oil's always been cyclical. You know, that should light up an economist's eyes. Anywhere there's a cycle, he's interested in looking at measuring both ends and the hump in the middle. So, but the reality of it is oil may be on this, but we had this all the way up on oil in Kansas. We are so much better than we were 20 years ago anywhere in the United States with oil, because we have started to find some. You brought up the point that the overextension in the bacon fields up in North Dakota and that sort of area where they lit the economic candle on both ends, and now they watch the wax melt out of the middle. But even after all of that happens to those companies, we still have developed that natural resource to the top of the soil where we can pump it, deliver it. We've created a market where there wasn't one. So long term, we've got a market, we've got a supply, we have natural demand in this country. That will work for us sooner or later. Kansas has always been one of these little small oil markets. And those people have income. You made that point yesterday. They have income. Maybe the price relationship isn't what they want, but they have income and they're spending it.
So, so in the oil markets, you think of, you have these massive global producers, then in the United States you have really big ones, and then you have small ones. We are teeny tiny in the overall global market. But in Kansas, they're actually family owned, they're very connected to the land, and that's what actually prevented these companies from getting in the troubles during the previous boom. When prices got too high, they got out of it and let people buy it way too expensive and bought it back on dollars. There were a few pennies on the dollar. And this last boom, where we started to go down, you saw that searching. In Kansas, we didn't have it. Well, that had a negative effect because they didn't do it. But the good thing is they didn't get caught, Everyone else did all this searching in Texas and everywhere else, and then they overproduced. And because of the fundamentals of economics, too much supply, it would have destroyed us. But they have done really well. They're very smart, and they keep handling the markets well. It'll come back, and it will benefit rural, but not right now, not today, and not until prices get back.
So back to the point of what we say about things, it's also what you hear about things that you might repeat. The global oil market is not the Kansas oil market.
It's different,
totally different economy. And in Kansas, really, where we are, because of the ups and downs, yes, but oil is still good in Kansas and has been for a long time. And because of their moderation on the end of the graph, it's probably going to stay good for a long time.
So we have, in this area, it's called the West Texas Intermediary, which is what is dominant, but we're different from that. So we're even different from the prominent ones. This Kansas wheat crude, and it's going to have its own market, and we have our own production, our own processing of it. So we're an energy state, and we're not going to lose our energy status quite yet. We still have a lot more because of that fracking technology you're trying to refer to, that makes it easier to pull it out. It's going to be there, and they'll still drive part of, particularly it drives income in rural areas, but that fuels back to urban areas. They're interconnected.
And on the accounting side of thought, if you will, oil in the ground is on our balance sheet. It's an asset.
Oh, yeah.
And it's there, and we know it, and we know how to develop it. And so looking at it towards a positive view, Kansas' balance sheet includes oil and gas. And we should not forget that. That energy independence as a nation, I lived through the 70 Arab oil embargo my family business was a oil wholesaler. Right. That was not fun years. Right. So, but we have largely shielded our national economy from that risk with the moves that have been made in the oil business. So saying something positive about the oil business, we're so much better off than we were in 1970. I don't know you could put them on the same graph as far as how it affects us as people.
Yeah, we have the reserve oil at the national level that helps bounce off those big supply and demand shocks. So that's a big part of it. And we don't have a lot of jobs in oil and gas, to keep in mind. We actually lost a lot of jobs, but we still own the assets, which I think you're kind of getting back to. We still own that resource, own the technology, and when it comes back, they'll have that come back through the income side, not through wages. It's going to be those people who are making those investments.
Well, I thought that was one of the great points you made yesterday, is it comes back through the income side. Nothing is perfect, but income is still income, and it gets spent, it gets spread around, it goes around through the local economies, and as you told us yesterday, works its way to the metro areas too. You had an interesting statistic about how money made here shows up there. Tell us how that works.
Oh, okay. So when we're thinking about income, I go around the state, and oftentimes you think some of the urban areas not sure about the connection to rural areas.
Right.
So we created a model and identified that there was a real relationship through income in rural communities, meaning not Wichita, Topeka, or Kansas City, and the retail sales in the big three, Wichita, Topeka, Kansas City. So 1% increase in rural income had a 0.45% increase in taxable retail sales in those big cities. So Kansas City is going to should care what happens in income in rural, because that directly affects their retail sales. And that affects tax base, that affects a number of things. So when rural economy is not doing so well, the rest of the state's not doing well, these big cities are feeling it. And that's why we see this. One of the big reasons why we see that taxable retail sales not do so well.
So this may drive your economic brain a little crazy here. If it is, just hang on to the side of the chair like that. So said another way, anytime our income grows by a percentage point out here, the metro areas get to share in about 45% of that. 1 to 0.45 is the same as 100 to 45, right?
So yeah, we're talking about 1% difference. If you do 100, it's
exactly the same ratio. I knew you'd have to hold on a little bit, but that's an encouraging thought. You could say, wait a minute, are you saying that 45% of that income flows out of here? Well, maybe we're saying that. But what we're also saying is that metro Kansas and rural Kansas are still tied together in an economic sense far stronger than we would have presumed had you not built the model.
Right, yeah, where they're interconnected, and that's what we know.
And that's a good thing.
We're a one Kansas. It is not different parts of Kansas. I say rural for this context, but it's not rural and urban. It's one state, and we're all interconnected. We depend on each other.
So we said agriculture over here, and I want to talk about it last. So we talked about oil. We're sitting in a manufacturing powerhouse in north central Kansas. We really are. Compared to the population, that you look around the world, we're a manufacturing powerhouse. However, the news about manufacturing, not so good, yes, so good.
Oh, so nationally, manufacturing started to weaken. You see supply chains, but the difference is that we have manufacturing very different in Kansas than the rest of the nation. So in Kansas, we have a lot of food side, and that's been good for a long time, and it's really not going to go away as long as the economy is strong. And then we have a lot of this machinery manufacturing, which goes all the way to here into Salina and even up in Dickinson County, where you had some machinery manufacturing.
I wanted to ask about exports yesterday, but I saved it for today, so you'd have to answer it on camera. I know exports in your big number were down. How's our local exports doing?
Well, I don't have the local as in down to community level what it exports. That data is not
Central Kansas.
That's not available. But are people being hurt by trade? Now that's where we're feeling it, where we would have a lot more trade, probably not because of the existing company, because there's some connections that are just not disappearing with Kansas on trade. It's just the companies existing and those machinery manufacturing all across the state that's not exploring and trying to get new markets right now because of the trade war that's going on. That's what's weakening our trade today, not really the existing contracts. Because if you think of aerospace, which is predominant across the state, those contracts aren't going away.
Right.
It doesn't matter what the costs go up. They're going to continue that flow no matter what the trade war does.
So we have a number of local manufacturers in the area, ag equipment, that have traditionally been large exporters of their product. And so yesterday you talked a little bit about soybeans and the marketplace, and that market, some of that was sucked up by Brazil and South America. Well, from personal knowledge from many, many years ago to today, they're planting soybeans in that country with equipment from the United States.
Oh yeah.
So anytime they're expanding their footprint down there, at least this portion of the manufacturing business is picking up benefit, because you can't add another 1 million acres in Brazil without a XYZ drill behind your tractor.
Yeah, so that machinery manufacturing that went to all this farm equipment, we've developed a lot of that farm equipment that can handle really large area. And that's really the only way to stay competitive in a commodity side. So it's not just soybean, but it's some of the other grains that we have some unique equipment that's shipped not just to Brazil, which is one of those ones that had a lot of contracts, but there's a lot of other countries too that have products that were made from this here, and technology as well. So it's not just physical products, but the technology and experience. Matter of fact, I've seen several times where we've had tours of people from other countries coming and identifying how we do farming practices as well, where they're learning our skills and trades to then be more proficient in that same part of farming.
The agriculture question, I think there's more news in our local media and state media. If you look, there are more links to agriculture than probably anything else that we talk about, other than things we can't control, which is whatever's happening in Washington disaster, right? So agriculture has not been a good story for a while. Net farm incomes are like this. How much time we got left, Dave? Okay. So we know that. Well, we see that people who live here, we see that in daily conversations with people we know first, middle, and last name and all their kids' names. So for us, it's really not a thought about the economy as it is so much the human side of agriculture. I think everybody watching the program already knows the answer about what their incomes on their farms are doing. I think the societal impacts is what concerns me more than anything else. Where farmers are aging. I think I'm an average age farmer at 62. That's kind of a little scary. But as we talk about agriculture, I think there are some people who are working on things that have promise, and I tempted you with this yesterday. There's a group in St. Francis, Kansas, is talking about microeconomies in agriculture, things that require labor to do, handwork, vegetable crops, things you have to pick, that sort of thing. I using time here today to say, I think that the future will have some solutions we don't know what are yet from an economy sense of the word. Somebody will do something new in agriculture.
And we need that, right? We need that creative destruction to say, okay, hey, we can't keep doing the same thing in this commodity agriculture. This needs to be value added or some micro kind of farming. But to know what that is, we don't know. But we need the right environment so that farmers take those risks to try to figure out how to supplement their income. So sometimes, not just farming, but even other industries, you get close to this brink of real disaster, and then they get creative and come up with a new solution.
So I have a new challenge for you.
Okay, what is it?
I asked you once to tell me what the economic value of finishing high school was in our size communities, and we never found a funder for that, but you did give me some pretty good data that I did this with behind the scenes and used, just so you know. But the reality of it, I would love to know in rural Kansas what the economic benefit of a single addition to the population would be. And that includes any payments. I'm not even talking about a job. I'm talking about people have to eat, they live, somebody, food, all of that. Just a simple addition of people. Here's my premise in our last couple of minutes here probably. I think the number one problem is in rural Kansas is first finding a way to attract people to live there, to wipe away the myth that Kansas is not a nice place to live, and replace it with reality. It's a perfect place to especially raise children and grow and have a happy life here in the Midwest. But the economic value of getting somebody to Kansas, your cousin, your son-in-law, all of those things, that is what normal people can do.
Right.
And that if we follow that path, we will win if we get people who live here. I think we have assets all around us to employ people. Labor shortage was the number one thing that got thrown at you yesterday in Abilene.
And every other community across the state.
And every other community. So people are the answer, are they not?
Oh, for a labor perspective, an economic perspective, absolutely. Labor is everything for growing an economy. And to your point of the tax base, you need a person just use certain population size to maintain. And so it's really not really how much it adds, but keeping people there also keeps the tax base, keeps infrastructure. The cost is actually more expensive than even adding another person.
Surely we can find somebody to fund that work.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't be hard. We got the model to do it, just adding a person to do it all the time.
I tell you, we need that done.
Yep.
I really think so. So I'm going to take the challenge of telling everybody I know
right.
that work needs done, and you're the guy to do it.
Sure.
Okay.
I'd be glad to model that for you.
Okay. All right. I know we're out of time, Jeremy. So glad to see you again.
Yep.
3 kids, one in high school.
Yeah,
Kinda
one just got out of
scary.
high school this year and driving on the
That's
roads.
even scarier, right?
She's actually good, so I'm not worried. My other kids I'm worried about.
Well, I know how that is. Been there, been down the road before you. You'll live through it if you
Yeah.
play your cards right.
Yeah.
Jeremy Hill, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Always good to see
All
you.
right.
My name's Dennis Weiss. I work for Eagle Broadband. Wishing you a great day.